Ivy Nation Sports Talk up rolling. It's Monday, and there are 5 days to go until the football season begins. Game week is here, baby.
Finally here. We had a discussion last night on our show whether does game week start on Sunday or does game week start on Monday? I contend it starts on Monday.
I think Monday, because like the course of the season, Sunday you're still doing,
Yeah.
You're talking about the day before and
Agreed.
writing about the day before and getting no sleep because of the day before.
Seriously.
All that kind of stuff.
Yes,
So,
night games, you got to sleep in a little bit on a Sunday. Yeah, that part I'm not looking forward to. Now, the best part for me personally is I get Labor Day off as well from my regular job.
True.
So a little bit more rest time, but then, 2 shows in a row. So, just bing, bang, boom.
Father David, those were the absolute best moves I have. So
I'm a heck of a chair dancer. It's when you get the legs involved that, stuff starts, going downhill. Yeah.
That was there. There's no, that's my dance move. I was the total white man overbite in high school. That's what it was. USMA 87. If you only knew like what you caused, I saw this comment in the chat. He says, "Will Sean be like every other Notre Dame media related event today?" And literally, as I was doing that, I slid my chair and it flipped the switch on the power. What do you call that thing?
Like the surge protector.
Yeah, surge protector. There you go.
Yeah.
Flip the switch and it rebooted my internet modem and the whole thing. So, little PSA. The press conference was not actually late today. They have rescheduled they're doing the press conference schedule different. Press conferences used to start at noon. Now they're going to start at 12:30 because they're giving food to the media at 12 o'clock.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Really?
Yep.
So
bringing back the media lunch.
So on Monday, I'm going to the media. Okay, got it.
Yeah. I knew you'd find a way to show up at the press conference.
That's interesting because that is not on brand right now for Notre Dame, really. I mean,
literally, it's probably been about 20 years since they did the pre-press conference. Yeah.
This is what I'm saying.
I want to say we goes all the way back to the Tyrone Willingham era, like the last time they did it. So
yes,
I did not partake today. I had like other things I was getting done before I went there. Hopefully next week I'll be able to stop in, have a lunch beforehand. So
there you go. So because what isn't the email that we got yesterday? Didn't it say noon?
Well, I had to read it and reread it and reread it to make sure, because of the things that I had to get done beforehand. I was like, okay, so what starts at noon? Lunch starts at noon. Press conference starts at 12:30.
Okay.
So like you had to kind of look closely.
Gotcha.
But yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, press conferences on Mondays
are
going to start at 12:30 now, assuming they're sticking to the same schedule. But they had the video scheduled for noon. I think that's what threw some people off, because like it said 12 and it kept saying waiting and that kind of and literally as I was driving there, I was double checking it to make sure once again after I had checked that email 10 times. So all right, well, we've got a lot that we're going to get to today. We got the first depth chart today in addition to the Marcus Freeman press conference, and that means we know officially who the offensive line starters are going to be. So we're going to have some of Marcus Freeman's comments about that. I saw this DJ who, shows up in our shows fairly regularly, and he's a subscriber on the Champions Lounge. He posted this, and I saw it over the weekend, and he says, I wanted to share it. He says, I appreciate if you could bear with an old guy rant. I'm old enough to remember getting the newspaper, like magazine, blue and gold, something in the mail.
Okay.
That and an occasional article in the Indy Star. We knew very little about the new freshmen. Half the sophomores, we didn't remember their names. Game one, there was a big anticipation for the season to start. It was fun and exciting. Every Irish fan you ran into was fired up for the season. About 10 days before game day, your mind would start wandering a few times a day, wondering how strong the team would be. And I guess, the reason I saw it was like literally, like when I moved here 24 years ago, to cover Notre Dame, it was basically you had blue and gold, you had
Sure.
South Bend Tribune, you had the radio stations in town talking about Notre Dame football, basketball, whatever. But like none of the stations at that time, streamed any of the shows, like the talk shows and stuff like that. Literally nothing. So like think about where just like the wall-to-wall coverage, like you weren't getting these podcasts. There were none of the websites around. Blue and Gold was still just that.
It was a magazine.
Yeah, that Blue and Gold magazine newspaper thing.
Yep.
You got, like you said, you got it in the mail. So.
Yeah, because they've been doing that since the 70s, I want to say. They've been doing that probably before then even. But I know it was around in the 80s, and that's where a lot of the guys who are still on the beat to this day got their start, was writing for the magazine,
Yep.
And Blue and Gold still puts out a magazine, by the way, every week. I've got the lack of sleep to prove it when I used to work for Blue and Gold, because you got to meet those print times, those print deadlines. But
that is just crazy. Working after the game to do that.
Oh, it's awful.
It's nuts.
It was Sean, it was awful. But anyway,
they must be making something off it if they're still making it.
Well, there's a lot of old guys out there, wanting to still read the
a lot physical. Of DJs and
yeah, I mean, it just is what it is. But it's cool. Look, I will say this: there was nothing cooler than when I got the first edition of Blue and Gold, the Blue and Gold magazine, and it had my name in it. Like that was cool. You know what I mean? Where I had written some articles, and so I will say that was still pretty cool. But was it worth like literally writing until 3 or 4 in the morning? I don't know. I don't think so. That's why I work for Irish Breakdown now. But I digress.
DJ used his paper route money for the subscription. That's kind of cool, actually.
That's awesome. Now, that's awesome. But you're right. Things have changed drastically. I mean, like,
well, think just kind of like piggybacking on what he was saying. Like, if you didn't have Blue and Gold, and you were even only reading the South Bend Tribune, like to read the Tribune, you still would have had to be in town.
Yeah.
Or like if Blue and Gold, you could get your subscription across the country. But for the most part, like this is where the season started for the average fan.
Sure.
Like maybe not even today. It started on Saturday. I mean, that's how it was for me. I wasn't getting subscriptions and all that kind of stuff, And I mean, think about just everything, just all the 800 websites that cover Notre Dame football now, and the podcasts, and just the whole thing. Everything is so different in terms of what you can get as a fan, and I think it's pretty cool, especially if you're a Notre Dame fan, because the fan base is so national. It's not just right here in town.
Well, and if you wanted like day-to-day coverage on the team, I mean, you had to listen to like Sports Beat, for example. I mean, you had to listen to the daily talk shows. There.
I'm kidding.
No, but you know what I mean? Like that was your daily fix if you wanted to get one, and it wasn't even all about Notre Dame.
But that was here in town still.
Exactly. There was no apps, like there was no internet to get that information. You had to be in town. So yeah, if you lived out of town, basically you're turning on the tube on the first day of the season, and you're like, okay, who is this team? Like you literally needed a roster to figure out who's who. You know what I mean? And I don't know where you would have gotten that said roster if you lived out of town, to be perfectly honest. So yeah, things have changed a lot. Look, mini old man rant. I still miss the days though with the newspaper covering like high school football. You know what I mean? And actually having the stories of each game in the paper the next day. Like next morning.
I mean, that's the shame of
Saturday morning.
Newspapers going by the wayside.
Man.
Is like the local coverage and stuff for stuff like that. For the because even we kept our subscription to the Tribune until a couple of years ago because, like you and I were doing Friday night high school games. We were broadcasting games together, and it used to be Saturday morning, get up and see how everybody else did in the area. And now that's not coming out until Sunday, sometimes even Monday.
Yes.
I think
awful.
And yet same with Notre Dame. Everything there's so much delay in terms of the print edition. There's just completely superfluous at this point. Everything is online, obviously. But, but again, like that's the shame of the way of the newspaper. I get it. They've been buying for a long time.
Totally get it. Like that was my thing, man. I would coach Friday night, And I'd get up Saturday morning for early morning practice, and the newspaper was already there. I'd grab it, take it with me to practice, and while we're watching film or while the guys are working out or whatever, sifting through the paper, seeing who did what, you know what I mean? Like that was, I really enjoyed that. And that has just, gone.
I remember being in the Notre Dame press box, the football press box, when there was a conversation taking place. Someone, like one of the higher ups in sports information, talking about when he got the first request for a Notre Dame football, like game day credential for website only.
Oh.
And they didn't know what to do with it. Like, do you credential it? Do like, how do you handle this? And now, obviously
everything's a website.
Virtually everything
now,
is website now. Yeah. So, I mean, and again, 20 years, that's 20 some years at this point, which is, it's a pretty good,
old,
it's a pretty good chunk of time. That's right. All that does is make us old.
Yeah.
We can remember that. So you want to go old man rant. That's all that is.
Seriously. Yeah. I ran into my old junior high football coach today, and I was talking about my son looking at colleges. I go, oh, coach, that makes me feel really old. He goes, no, you can't say that because that makes me even older. And I was like, yeah, you're probably right about that. So yeah, it was an interesting conversation. But anyway, I digress.
Back in my day, we didn't have no Peacock app, and we didn't have no Odyssey listening to the radio.
That's right.
We had a transistor and it had antennas. We liked it.
Yes, we did. Yes, we did.
But we like Notre Dame football. That's why we're here. Thanks for being here. Hit the like button. The season is basically upon us. Jesse's going to be in tomorrow. There's a promise of whiteboard. A promise.
Ooh.
He'll be fired if there's no whiteboard tomorrow, because we've gone over whiteboard material for tomorrow's show. So pretty excited about it. I think everyone's.
I want to know how much film he's digging into here. Are we looking at Kansas State film? Okay.
Looking at some Colin Klein, Kansas State stuff.
Nice.
Yep.
Wow,
that's
he's doing his homework. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, young gun.
Ratcheting it up, bringing the noise. Depth chart.
Yes.
Anthonie Knapp, Sam Pendleton.
They are the starters.
Left tackle, left guard. 6 total starts on this offensive line, Vince.
It's fantastic.
6 career starts on this offensive line going to Texas A&M.
I mean, it really is mind-boggling if you think about it. Notre Dame is returning both of their starting guards from last year. Both of them.
And neither one of them are starting.
Neither one of them are starting, and they're both backing up a different position than they started last year, because Rocco started at right guard. He's backing up left guard. And Pat Coogan started at left guard, and he's backing up the center. Mm-hmm. So, mind blown for me.
Anarchy.
I don't want to say holding out hope, because that's not even the right phraseology to use, but I was like, man, that's not who they're going to start. That was eye candy to get people talking, that kind of stuff. And hey, man, I was wrong. I was very, very wrong. So let's hope. We were worried that they were just going to focus on experience and not how good a player was.
Yeah.
We talked about that, right? We were
That's
worried
not the way they went.
That is not the way that they did. They said, oh yeah, we're going to go the complete opposite. So, okay, let's see what you got.
Anthonie Knapp, left tackle. Marcus Freeman talked a little bit about him today.
I think you make decisions in the moment based off previous experiences, and then that's the beautiful part of practice. There's competition, and I tell those guys every day you should be trying to take somebody's job, right? And every day if you're a starter, you should know guys behind you are trying to take your job. And we've had 10 practices since then that basically kind of got us to this conclusion that Anthonie Knapp will be our starting left tackle. But he's worked tirelessly. He's done a really good job of building trust with his coaching staff, and that's why we made that decision.
Pretty impressive. He's going to be the 3rd Notre Dame freshman to ever start on the offensive line in a season opener.
Look, I am surprised yet happy, I guess is the best way to put it, because I didn't think that they would have the guts to do what they're doing. And they're literally saying, look, these are the best two guys that have been playing on the left side all through camp, and we're going to go with them. And I just wasn't sure they had the guts to do it. And they do. And so I hope it works out. I hope it's what everybody wants to see, and they pick the best guys for the job, all of that. And, we didn't see enough practices to make that kind of a conclusion, but that's the coach's conclusion. And they didn't just go with the experience. So,
this struck me today because I think for the first time, someone asked about, maybe the second time since training camp started, somebody asked about Emil Wagner.
Yeah.
And all the talk has been on the left side of the line, mostly at the left tackle.
Sure.
Justifiably so, obviously. But Emil Wagner, he came into camp. He was number 1 on the depth chart at right tackle, but Wagner's not experienced, right? Like, nope. That's hardly even been talked about. Like all the concern, and even before that, when Jagasaw, as good as Jagasaw looked against Oregon State, I mean, he still only had the 1 start under his belt. But it was basically like, well, we came into camp, those 2 guys were at the top of the depth chart, and everyone just kind of took that, went with it.
Yep.
And, but again, like Emil Wagner doesn't have any more starts than Anthonie Knapp has on the other side. He's just been around the program a couple of more years and gotten a little bigger and stronger and all that kind of stuff.
Right. Hey, here we go. I mean, I don't know what else to say, to be perfectly honest with you, because I haven't seen enough of either one of those 2 guys to really give an informed, intelligent, analysis of their collegiate play. Like I've seen them play in high school. High school doesn't always translate, you know what I mean? And so I haven't seen enough.
Not on the offensive line.
We got to trust the coaches at this point, right? I mean, that's kind of where we're at. They've decided that those guys went above and beyond, frankly, because they usurped 2 guys that have starts under their belts, and now those guys are backing up at different positions. So, okay.
Well, and to me, the most shocking one is the move of Sam Pendleton.
Yes,
going from number 2 center to passing. Like you said, I mean, you had 2 guys who started 23 games between them at the guard positions last year, and he passed both of them basically in the last 2.5 weeks, I guess, right?
Yeah. In the last 10 practices.
Right.
Okay, cool. Let's roll. Let's see what you got. I mean, no better litmus test than Texas A&M, right? I mean, we're going to see what these guys have, and there's going to be mistakes because they're young and they're inexperienced and all of those different things. But apparently the upside is better, and the upside is one that they're willing to take this chance and take this risk, and they don't think it's a risk. These are the best 2 guys to go out there and win the game. Look, no coach, and I want to be very clear on this, no coach has ever put a guy on the field thinking he doesn't give us the best chance to win.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, these coaches believe that these 2 guys give them the best chance to win in College Station on Saturday. Okay, let's roll. Let's see what you got.
It's kind of amazing.
It really is.
About it.
It really is. It really is.
I know. So here's what Freeman said about Pendleton making his move.
Yeah, I would say the same thing with Knapp, right? Is just it's consistency in doing the job you're expected to do over and over and over. And that's why you make decisions, right? It's not a one-day thing, and it's not a last year thing. It's okay, who do we believe has consistently shown in practice to get the job done over and over and over, and that's why we made those decisions. We have a lot of confidence in the 2 deep of our offensive line, right? There's guys with experience that are in the 2 deep, but at the end of the day, you have to make a decision on who you want that first group to be, and Anthonie and Sam are 2 guys we felt would give us the best chance to have success.
There you go. Sam Pendleton in there, Anthonie Knapp in there. And it's interesting because Mike Elko at his press conference today down there at Texas A&M was asked about Notre Dame and the young offensive lineman. And he said something to the effect of basically, well, if Notre Dame is starting freshmen, they're probably going to end up being NFL guys. Like they might be freshmen, but they're very talented because
Yeah.
what's Notre Dame been known for over the last several years? Offensive linemen and tight
right.
ends.
Yeah. I mean, there was never any lack of talent, right? It's just lack of experience. I mean, that's where this offensive line is. And the only way, it's like when you go to get your first job, right? And they're like, well, you don't have enough experience. We're like, well, where am I supposed to get that experience? You know what I mean? Like, the only way to get experience is to get the job. These guys are going to get experience, and they're going to get it. It's not going to be spoon fed. It's going to be shovel fed, obviously, going into College Station and Kyle Field and all of that stuff. So we're going to find out real quick if they're ready. And these coaches seem to think that they're ready, and this team has championship aspirations. They're not going to put somebody out there that they think are going to lose, that they're not going to be able to do the job, right? So, I'm excited to see it.
And in terms of readiness, here's the question. Here's the quote from Marcus Freeman. I'm gonna play it because he was asked about the inexperience of Notre Dame's offensive line going up against that talented Texas A&M defensive line.
Yeah, it's going to be a great challenge. Their defensive line is going to present a great challenge no matter if you're experienced or not. And that's what you'll see on film over and over. They got a really good defensive line. But the guys that are going to play, they go against our defensive line every day. And we feel very confident in the defensive line we have. And so they've shown to have success against really good defensive linemen. And we feel those guys will give us the best chance, and that's why we made that decision.
And I think that's why you have to feel confident in this, Vince, because we know how talented and deep Notre Dame's defensive line is. And I mean, you can throw the front seven in there for that matter. And these guys winning these jobs, they're not just proving it against the guys they were directly competing for the jobs. They were doing it by proving it against that very talented defensive line that we've been talking up this entire offseason. That's who they were proving it against. And so regardless of the amount of, like there's bound to probably be a mental mistake or two, especially when you've got the environment and all that stuff. And that's why I think you and I thought maybe for the opener, because Freeman said, what's it been, 9 days ago now, the last press conference that he had, the starters on game 1 might not necessarily be the starters in game 5 or game 6. And that could still be the truth here. But that's also why we thought maybe if Knapp was going to be the left tackle, then you're going to stick with that veteran Coogan next to him.
Right.
Again, because there are so few starts. Schrouth and Craig each have 3 career starts. They were the end of last season. Those are the only 6 starts on the entire offensive line. But again, you've been proving it every day in practice against that Notre Dame defensive line. And obviously that has to mean something. And it did ultimately for him. Well,
and here's the best part about this whole thing, right? If this offensive line is the one that starts all season, you can add, potentially 13, 14, 15, 16 starts to every one of these 5. And then all 5 of them are coming back next year. And so we're having a completely different conversation, right? I mean,
well, think about that. I mean, I don't even want to think about next year yet because you're getting Jagasaw back for one. So now what are you doing?
Good point. I mean, if this is the 5 that you have going into next year, you're looking at 75, 80 starts, for the offensive line. That used to be 6. You know what I mean? And so, but you're right. Jagasaw comes back. He's going to find a spot someplace. He's arguably the best offensive lineman you have, right? So, yeah, it is, like I said, it's never been a lack of talent. It's been figuring out where the best pieces fit. This is where they think the best pieces fit. So let's have some fun.
USMA 87 says all those offensive line starts for Florida State didn't really seem to help. Yeah. I mean, didn't help their defensive line.
I was going to say it was the defensive line that was getting smoke showed. So, yeah.
Man, big time. Well, we'll talk a little bit about, some of the other spots on the depth chart that kind of stood out. Here's a little bit from Marcus Freeman, just kind of on like where the depth chart is and reiterating sort of his whole stance on where things stand right now.
We put out our depth chart today, which I'm sure I'll have questions about here soon. But I reminded our team last week that in my 2 years here, out of 52 possible starting lineups with O and D, we've had 39 different starters, different starting lineups. And I think that's about 82 different starters. And it's just a reminder that, there's one guarantee that the future is uncertain. So everybody on this trip has to be ready for any role. And that, we're going to need everybody that makes a trip down there. As we go throughout the season, we're going to need them all. And so, as I told them, like, the first depth chart doesn't dictate the value of this team, of you on this team, but also what the future will hold.
When you have depth, the depth chart is sort of a starting point, right? Like, especially like you look at those linebackers. They had to somebody had to show up on the too deep depth chart. But if everything that they talked about with the linebackers, that's going to be a very fluid situation, for example. But I like the points that he hit. One, you're always competing for a job. Just because you win the job and get in week one doesn't mean you're going to keep it for the entirety of the season. But again, injuries happen. And I think that there were a few different points throughout the press conference where he brought up depth. And that's the biggest difference in the roster right now. And you can talk about, well, are they, at what level are they really recruiting and all that kind of stuff? Well, the entirety of the roster is so much different. And the depth is so much different now compared to just 3 years ago.
No question about it. The depth is what makes this team what we think this team can be, right? I mean, if you want to talk in the short term about all the heat that's going to be down there in Texas, you've got some depth to combat that. That's one of the ways that you combat hot temperatures, right? And this is one of the best rosters that I think we've seen, you and I, since we've been covering the team in recent memory. I mean, this is a deep, deep roster. I think maybe at the top, there's some spots that you might cherry pick, where, you could put a better player in or whatever from past Notre Dame teams. Okay, cool. I get that. But this is the deepest roster that we've seen at Notre Dame in a very, very long time, because in the past it would be, okay, the starters are pretty darn good, and then there's a heck of a drop off. And so if there's an injury, then you're in real trouble, that kind of thing. This depth chart is crazy, which is what makes these position battles so fascinating, because there's guys coming out of nowhere that are taking these jobs because of how deep the depth is on this roster, offensive line included, right? So this is a very, very deep roster. I think it pays dividends throughout the season when you've got nicks and scrapes and bruises and things like that. I mean, it's kind of a plug and play situation with a lot of guys that are within this too deep.
Don Schuler going to start at safety next to Xavier Watts.
That was surprising.
Yeah.
That one took me by surprise. I think we all assumed that Rod Hurd was going to, step into that safety spot. But I think we also all assumed that all three of them were going to play. I just didn't anticipate seeing a Don Schuler being the starter without an or after his name. I mean, Rod Hurd is backing up Xavier Watts on the depth chart.
Well, that's what I was going to say. It's not only that he's not starting, he's not even backing up Schuler. They've got him at the field behind Watts, and they've got Luke Talich backing up Schuler. And then in an or situation with Kennedy Urlacher, who I think maybe is a little bit of a surprise, just that Urlacher is at that spot right now, basically in an or situation with Talich for the number 2 at the boundary safety.
Right. Yeah. Crazy. But again, it speaks to the depth, right? So I'm excited, man. Bottom line, I'm excited about seeing this team. We all are, right? We've been talking about this 2024 Notre Dame football team for 8 months. Like it's time to see something. And so I'm excited about it.
So does that mean, to Tommy Gunn's question, is this year the current season yet? I mean,
this year started the first day of fall camp, in my opinion. Like that was when
I agree.
This year started.
I agree. I would concur with that. Christian Gray is going to start opposite of Benjamin Morrison. They'll be the 2 corners. I don't think that's surprising at all. Maybe somewhat interesting. Jordan Clark is the nickel. Carson Hobbs is the number 2 nickel. So I think that there's probably a pretty good chance that we see Carson Hobbs out there on Saturday, with that being the case.
I mean, the freshmen are stepping up, which I love to see. I mean, that part by itself, I mean, you've got Leonard Moore in the 2 deep behind Benjamin Morrison, right? I mean, lots of freshmen kind of sprinkled in here, right? Offensively and defensively. So, Gerby Lambert's in the 2 deep at tackle. I mean, you've got what? 1, 2, 3. You got about 5 freshmen in the 2 deep, I think, if I'm counting correctly. So the recruiting continues to be very, very good at Notre Dame, and those guys are going to get an opportunity to show their mettle early.
I kind of did a little late add-on after I sent you the rundown, but the wide receivers, they're all listed as ORs. So you've got Jordan Faison or Chris Mitchell, Bo Collins or Jaden Thomas, Jaden Greathouse or Jaden Harrison. Nothing really noteworthy in that, other than those are the 6 that basically we've been projecting this whole time. And there was an argument last week about, is it 6 or is it 8, and that whole thing. These, at least this week, these are going to be the primary 6 guys that, like based on everything that we did see with how things were running with first team and second team and stuff like that. Those guys, Faison, Mitchell, Collins, Thomas, Greathouse, Harrison, those are going to be the core 6 guys going into the season.
And like you said, I think this is what we expected. And the fact that they're all ORs is not overly surprising, because I think they are going to sub liberally with those 6 guys. I think they're going to, depending on matchups, depending on, situations in the game, you're going to see some form or combination of all 6 of these guys, right? So I'm not in any way surprised by the fact that they have an OR there. It's just, hey, you're going to see these 6 guys play. And we don't care who starts. It doesn't matter. These are the 6. And I think they kind of consider all 6 of them starters. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Excuse me. Jason said Osbury in the rotation at Will and Rover, he thinks. And yes, that'll be the case. He is the number 2 Rover.
And that was always going to be the case. He was one of the 5.
Right. Exactly. Drake Bowen is listed as the number 1 middle linebacker with Kingston Biliamu Asa behind him. At Will, it is Kaiser, then Osbury, and then Osbury and KVA is listed as an OR at number 2 Will linebacker, and then Rover is listed Jalen Sneed at the top and Osbury at number 2. But again, remember, we talked about that when we got to talk to Max Bull a couple weeks ago, a 5-for-3 situation with those spots. So a lot of talent there, and again, it's going to be somewhat intriguing to see kind of how they deploy those guys and what 100%. Situations they're in and that kind of stuff.
100%. There's going to be a lot to see on Saturday. Let's just put it that way.
Mm-hmm.
Have your notebook and your pen ready, and then all of you can just sit and watch the game, and then just tune in afterwards to the post game show, and we'll try to let you know everything that you could possibly want to know about that game.
Aeneas Williams, by the way, the number 3 running back, and then Devin Ford, the number 4 running back. So based on that, I'm guessing maybe Price or Williams is like the short yardage type guy. I'm curious to see what the roles
are.
Exactly.
I mean, the fact that they have an OR between Love and Price pretty much tells me those 2 are.
Well, yeah. I mean, we know those 2 are going to play a lot.
Yeah, they're going to get the majority, and then there's going to be a big drop off, and then they get to 3 and 4 and whatever that looks like.
Yeah. No other real, no surprises.
No.
Steve Angeli's the number 2 quarterback. I know that makes you happy.
Oh, you know it. I'm not in any way surprised by that. It was one of the last things I looked at because I knew that's what it was going to say. It doesn't really mean a whole lot, you know what I mean? And they only go 2 deep, so we have no idea who 3 and 4 are, right? So, okay, cool. Angeli is your second string guy on paper. If Riley Leonard goes down with a serious injury, let's see if that actually shakes out. I'll say that.
Correct.
Because I don't think it would.
So a couple of different things. Stymie said the line moved a half a point. He says he's seeing +3 and +120 on the money line. Line was at +3 at the end of last week. Yeah.
It's been +3 for a while.
Yeah. And I think we were talking about, because Jesse and I were talking about this a little bit on Thursday. I think at least one of the books had plus 120. I know there were some plus 118s, plus 120s, and stuff like that. Again, like the line moving at this point with Texas A&M having been the favorite the entire time, and with the line bumping up a little bit in the last week or two, all that essentially means at this point is there's more money going to Texas A&M. So
Exactly.
the line moves, and because Vegas is trying to hedge it and get more money.
Oh yeah.
Going to Notre Dame, and the line has actually frozen at 3 for the last probably 5 days now at this point.
Right.
So they're probably starting to get even money on
Yep.
those sides. But again, like if you think Notre Dame is going to win, the money line is where the value is, because you're getting plus odds on that.
Oh,
So,
I will be putting some money down on the money line at some point between now and Saturday. You can guarantee that. That's absolutely happening. Try to win some of my ill-gotten gains back.
win some of your ill-gotten
That
gains.
didn't make any sense, did it? Some of my how do I want to say this? Some of my ill-thought-out bets. How about that? There you go.
So you're chasing bad money with good,
Chasing
is
it.
what you're
Yeah,
saying.
that's exactly right. And I feel
That's
very,
how-
very good about. The problem was in 22, like everything I bet Notre Dame won. I felt real good about every bet I had against for Notre Dame. 23, Notre Dame burned me a few different times, man. Like it was not a good year for me, that's for sure.
Well, Vince, are you ready for rapid fire?
Whoa, is it time already? Let's go.
It is.
Rapid
It
fire,
is.
baby.
Let's do it. I don't know what we're waiting for. I got a couple more comments from Marcus Freeman today. It has actually warmed up in South Bend over the last couple of days.
Yes,
Marcus
it is.
Freeman asked today if it's too late for his team to kind of use this increased heat and humidity here at home to prepare for the heat they're going to see down in Texas Saturday.
Appreciate the good Lord Almighty bringing the heat here. What else would you want being here at Notre Dame, and our mother on top of the Golden Dome bring a little heat on Monday, Tuesday, and probably into Wednesday. But no, it's not too late. We've been preparing for the heat, but now it's not just preparing. Like, you'll feel it, right? You'll feel it out at practice, and it's probably going to be warmer tomorrow during practice than it probably will be for the game. And so it's a great reminder for our players. Like, now you have your routines for hydration and refueling, but now you have to do it with the heat. It's not just, hey, remind you to drink fluids and to, have carbs during these breaks that we have. It's like the heat will force you to do that too. And so it's going to be good to be out there. We'll go out there today. We'll go out there tomorrow and get a little bit of it on Wednesday too. But it's going to be good for our team to really just feel the heat and double down on that routine we talked about to help them perform at a high level.
Heat's back, Vince. What do you think?
I mean, he's not wrong. It couldn't be a better timed situation, because the heat's going to go Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and then it starts to dip again back down to, I guess, quote unquote normal for this time of year. It'll be like 81, I think, on Friday, and then it gets down back into the mid upper 70s next week. It's perfect timing, man. Everybody's like, well, how do you prepare for the heat? How do you prepare for the heat? It's going to be 97 tomorrow. Like, that's how you prepare for the heat. And
Yeah.
And it's not even going to be that hot, I don't believe, on Saturday down in College Station. So they're actually going to be practicing.
Well, that's what he was
hotter
saying.
Temps.
Yeah, that's what he was saying. It's actually
Crazy.
probably going to be hotter tomorrow when they're practicing here in South Bend than it is Saturday for
No
the game.
shocks.
So it's perfect. Like, you felt the heat a little bit. I saw somebody say, don't wear them out. Like, they're not going to, kill them during game week at this point. And we're going to get to the health here in just a second. But it's like, to me, it couldn't have come at a perfect time, because you had these people a few weeks ago saying, well, you pack up and you go have camp, for a week down there in Texas, so you get used to it and everything else. And it's like, the law of averages said that sooner or later that there had to be some heat here in South Bend,
Exactly.
because, and of course it's like today was the first day of class as well. So as soon as classes are back and students are in those non-air conditioned dorms, that's when the heat rolled into South Bend.
Of course it did.
Of course
it did. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's it's perfect timing. They'll get out there, practice in the 90s, get your sweat on, and then like you said, it becomes, you're not just telling them drink more and stuff like that. It's like they actually want to drink more. They need to drink more. And you get them in that habit where they actually have to drink even more this week because they are expending more fluid and electrolytes and all that kind of stuff. So hopefully we don't that we can put that particular conversation to bed.
Exactly.
Now, Freeman also had some interesting comments on the health of his team during this camp. He had some numbers to back it up.
This has been the healthiest fall camp, really, since I've been head coach. But as we've really taken data, probably from the last 12 to 15 years, we've had the fewest injuries in I think 15 years. We practiced 15% more this fall camp than we had previously. We only had one concussion, and we're down 30% overall in concussion strains and sprains. And so just wanted to say that I'd like to give credit to our sports performance team and in the way they've supported our players outside of practice and to our coaches that have bought into the adjustments we've had to make going into each practice, the way we've structured practice. The results have shown that it's been really good. We've practiced more and had less injuries, and that's a great statistic.
Practiced more and less injuries. How significant do you think that is?
I mean, it's significant in the fact that they had no injury, or I shouldn't say no. It's significant in the fact that they had less injuries. For sure, you want to be at full strength as much as possible. And look, football is a collision sport. There's going to be guys that are going to get hurt. There's going to be concussions. There's going to be sprains. There's going to be ACLs. There's going to be shoulders, whatever the case may be. It's going to happen. You just hope it doesn't happen to somebody that's crucial to your season, right? And I think they escaped fall camp at this point without losing anybody crucial to their season. I mean, look, Jagasaw is obviously a huge loss. He's never played for Notre Dame, really. I mean, he played one game. You know what I mean? Like, that's not a season changing event.
When you tear a pectoral muscle in practice and, up into the shoulder the way he did, and you had another guy, obviously, with a broken foot, and you had another guy, with an ACL, but especially, like my point being, like the shoulder. It's not like the strength coach. It's not like there's something that he could have done to prevent that, because obviously there was a very awkward type situation that forced, that arm and shoulder to do something that it's not meant to do, for it to tear to that degree, and for the injury to be as bad as it, was. And like Bryce, look, every time that there's an ACL, everyone wants to blame the strength coach for the ACL.
True.
Like ACLs at all levels and all different,
and they happen at random times, like no contact, like yeah.
Look at the Super Bowl last year with the, remember the 49ers linebacker running on the field, tearing the Achilles,
just running onto the field.
How crazy that was. There's nothing the strength coach could have done to prevent that. And when you get into these torn, like there's a different, like it's like the, the muscle pulls and things like that were such a big issue, especially at the wide receiver position, obviously last year. Those are the red flags. And, again, like the concussions, there's nothing the strength coach can do to prevent that, but they're almost all of them wearing those Guardian helmets now, and like, that's a thing, so those preventative measures have obviously gone a long way. And that's awesome. Coming out of camp to have as few injuries is what they ended up with.
Yeah, it's huge. It's not insignificant in any way. Some of it's luck. Some of it is the strength coach. Like, it's a combination of all of that, right? I mean, sometimes you're just unlucky. Sometimes you can just do everything right and you're just unlucky. I mean, it's just the way it is, right? But you also want to have a good system in place and a good foundation and all of those things, and it appears that they do.
Interesting one here. Carter Carls saying that Texas A&M defensive back Jaden Hill will miss the first half of the Notre Dame game due to a targeting penalty against Florida State from last season. Okay.
Good to know.
Yeah. Interesting little tidbit.
Little note.
So this next one is a we in or we out from Salty that I missed last week. So he says the A&M game features the widest psychological distance between fan base expectations for the Irish in the last decade. Aggies are massively enthusiastic about their team's likelihood to go 12-0, while Irish fans are habitually full of dread and expect catastrophe around every corner. So you in or you out on that, Vince?
I mean, it's very clear that Texas A&M fans think that Texas A&M is going to be really, really good. Otherwise, the money line wouldn't be moving the way that it is. They're putting a lot of money on it. They are very confident on not only in game one, but I would assume for the rest of the season as well, right? So, and then, you look at Notre Dame fans. I think Notre Dame fans are only happy like if, somebody, their dog dies and, just anything negative could possibly happen. It's like Notre Dame fans live in a country song. Like that's how I view a lot of Notre Dame fans. You know what I mean? They just want to be miserable at all times. And
only happy when it rains.
Yeah,
that's
seriously. Right. And so I guess that part I agree with, that is the way the fans are looking at it. But man, you got a really good team to root for this year if you're a Notre Dame fan. And hopefully they start to get on board, I guess is the best way to put it.
I mean, to me, it seems like, I don't know. There's a wide range, I guess. Like when you look at this from Salty, there's a wide range in what everyone, there are definitely the ultimate pessimists who we have pop in and, like they usually stir things up in our chat room during the show and then either get booted out because they just won't quit or just leave on their own. I think for the most part, most Notre Dame fans are pretty optimistic about this season, but the situation with the offensive line has definitely thrown a pretty good wrench into their thinking about this whole thing.
I am very, very interested to see how Mike Denbrock deals with the offensive line. You know what I mean? Very interested to see how he deals with the offensive line.
Well, and like there's a lot of questions about, well, how do you coach this thing? How do you scheme this thing? With the left side of the line being a weakness. Again, like we're presuming
the weakness, yeah.
Right. You're presuming it's going to be a weakness. You haven't seen it yet. And now because they're young, you would expect that there would be some, kind of mental mistakes and that kind of thing. But I think that there are a lot of different things that Mike Denbrock can do, whether it's screen passes or whatever else to try to negate that Texas A&M defensive line. And and you have a mobile quarterback. That's part of the offense. That's something they have to be aware of.
Yeah, big time. That's huge. There's no doubt about it. It negates a lot of the issues that could arise from an offensive line standpoint. I mean, look, in 2021, the offensive line didn't play very well early on, obviously, and there was nothing Jack Cohn could do about it, right? Because I think you and I move better than Jack Cohn. So with Riley Leonard, it's a different conversation, right? I mean, they're going to do things with Riley Leonard. They're going to move the pocket. They're going to, have design runs with him. They're going to do a lot of different things with Riley Leonard that's going to negate a lot of that. So again, my point is Mike Denbrock is good. I mean, he's really good at play calling, and he's good at masking negatives with positives. There's a lot of positives, a lot of things to be excited about with this offense. And a lot of people are assuming the offensive line is going to be a problem. Yeah, look, I'm not going to debate with anybody the lack of experience. It's because it's true. That's just facts, right? I'm not going to debate that with anybody. But I think there's a lot of talent on this offensive line too. The question is, can Joe Rudolph get the most out of them as young guys who don't have a bunch of experience? You know what I mean? Can Joe Rudolph do it? We said it at the beginning of the year before Charles Jagasaw even got hurt. It's going to be a big year for Joe Rudolph. And that still is the case. So we'll see what he can do with this group.
Yeah. Salty said his question was more about the habitual overexuberance of Aggie fans. I mean, I think that that's always there. But again, like they think that they've got this roster stocked with talent. And there's a decent amount of talent down there that they've got, that Jimbo Fisher recruited that
Sure.
he was never able to maximize. But they've been through a lot of coaches over the years, and what ultimately has it got them? Now they've got a really good head coach in Mike Elko, and I think that people are just probably overly excited about that and what they think they're going to get, not only in year one, but in game one.
Yeah.
Right out of the gate against another ranked team.
Sure. Yep. No doubt about it.
Andre's asking, what's the biggest opportunity for this team outside of winning a national championship? This is a hard one to answer for me because, like, what else is there other than, like, in terms of big opportunities?
I mean, winning multiple games in the playoff is a big opportunity for this team.
I guess
mean,
that's true.
There's stuff that they haven't done before.
Hosting a playoff game?
Sure. Absolutely. That's never been done before, right? So there's a lot to play for this team. There's no doubt about it. Look, the biggest opportunity is winning a title. No doubt about that. There's nothing bigger than that. So that's the biggest. And then the next biggest thing would be getting to the championship, right? And then the next biggest thing would be getting to the Final Four. Like, you can just back it off. But any one of those things would be big for this team because they're things that this team has never done before.
I'm shaking my head for those listening.
For those audio people out there. Yes.
Yes. Tommy put this question in a couple of different times. Who decides to go for it first on 4th or 6th? I'll say Marcus Freeman.
He's the only one that decides whether you go for it on 4th and 6th. The offensive coordinator's job is to counsel the head coach and be like, hey, we got a great play for the situation. I think we can make it. Or, Marcus Freeman says, look, we need to go for this. And then it's the offensive coordinator's job to come up with a play that will obviously get the job done. But at the end of the day, the offensive coordinator is suggesting things that the head coach gets to make that decision.
That's the answer. But then, I was reading it, and that's the way I initially read it as well. Like between Freeman and Denbrock, who's making that decision. But he says, who goes for it first? Like, is he saying between Notre Dame and Texas A&M? Yeah. So, okay, yeah, he just snuck that in there. So is it like between Freeman and Elko? I'm going to go with Freeman. Like, Freeman has shown that he's not afraid to go for it on 4th down. I don't know exactly where Elko's confidence is going to be.
It's interesting because the way my initial gut thought was that Elko would be that guy because he's got nothing to lose. I mean, yes, he's favored in the betting lines or whatever, but let's be realistic. Notre Dame's the better football team, right? Notre Dame should win this game. So if I'm Mike Elko, I'm in front of the home crowd. I got nothing to lose. Let's do this. Let's go for it. Let's trust my defense. That's the strength of the A&M team is the defense. I trust my defense to make a play if we don't get it. So I'm going to go with Elko.
You're going to go with Elko. See, I just feel like Elko is a little more conservative, and Ant VR's, like he said, he was played scared maybe a little bit against Notre Dame last year. I feel like he's a little more conservative than Marcus Freeman. We know Freeman will go for it on 4th. Again, it's like Elko, new offensive coordinator. I mean, basically, it's a whole new team for him. I don't know. You are at home, so you've got that environment and all that kind of stuff. You're coaching your first game against a ranked team at home, high profile, all those different things. I still feel like Marcus Freeman is the one who's more likely.
Okay.
So I'll go with that.
I hope it doesn't come down to a 4th down for Notre Dame.
So Georgia Tech knocked off Florida State Saturday in Dublin. Both, of course, are Notre Dame opponents this season. So did the Irish schedule get tougher or easier after the Seminole loss?
This is tough because I still think Florida State's going to be a tough team to beat because they are well coached, and I think they're going to regroup, and I think they're going to be fine. This obviously hurts their chances of playing in the ACC championship, but it's still in their hands, right? They still have everything left in front of them, even though they lost game 1 and it was a conference game. But Georgia Tech is better than I thought they were going to be. Now, I still think they're a little one-dimensional. Obviously run the ball over pass the ball. So I'm not necessarily saying as a Notre Dame fan, I'm scared of Georgia Tech. And Georgia Tech, if anybody looks at their schedule, Georgia Tech has a tough schedule this year. And that's going to be tough to get up for and play the way they played on Saturday every single game that they play, right? They could be battered and bruised. If they're going to run the ball the way they ran the ball on Saturday, and that's their offense, they're going to be battered and bruised by the time they get to Notre Dame. So I will say it's still the same, in my opinion. I think one got a little better, one got a little worse, maybe, but I think it's still the same.
Just going to use this opportunity to say that anyone who is listening this summer heard me say Georgia Tech is going to be a pretty good team this year. Now, I didn't think they were going to beat Florida State, but I did say on Thursday, Florida State was a 10.5-point favorite. And I said, take Georgia Tech on that all day long. And they did. Haynes King, I think I heard Joe Tessitore say what I had said over the summer as well. Something, he might have said, well, somebody said, I don't think it was Tessitore, but somebody said poor man's Riley Leonard. But that's virtually a lot. I didn't say poor man's Riley Leonard, but that's kind of, he's like, a different version of Riley Leonard with the running. I will say this. He's going to have to throw the ball a little bit more if he's going to beat the Notre Dame defense.
My gosh.
They're not just, he's not just going to be able to run around. They're not just going to be able to pound it. I don't think Florida State was nearly as good as obviously what everybody thought. DJ Uiagalelei still can't throw the ball deep. I don't know how much the rain affected any of that, but he looked really bad trying to throw the ball deep. And I mean, that's where if Florida State's offense is going to be anything this year, he's got to be able to hit those deep shots. And he was just not able to do it against Georgia Tech. The other part of this, though, too, is that Georgia Tech defensive coordinator was an assistant for Mike Elko last year at Duke. So, like, you're basically like the defensive scheme that we see this weekend against Texas A&M is going to be pretty much the same scheme that we're going to see when they take on Georgia Tech later this season. I don't think that I don't think Florida State is nearly as good as a lot of people thought. Remember, they had a lot of roster turnover.
Sure.
Georgia Tech is better. Like, I don't expect Georgia Tech to be a top 10 team at the end of the day. So I'm more like you. Like, it's still in the middle. I think that these are both very winnable games, but games that are not going to be pushovers by any means either.
Right. Completely agree. Completely. You can't take them lightly, and I don't think they would have in the first. Look, both Georgia Tech and Florida State were still in the top half, of Notre Dame's schedule, and I think they still remain the top half of Notre Dame's schedule. And they're both going to be tough games, right? Notre Dame gets to host Florida State, and they go on the road to play Georgia Tech. So, I don't see the schedule looking all that different, if I'm being honest.
I agree. Like, that was kind of the Georgia Tech has been kind of like people were asking us for sleepers. That was kind of the closest thing I think that most of us could come up with for a sleeper, just because not a sleeper, but a trap game, maybe something along those lines. That was the closest thing, just because, I mean, they're going to be a good team. They were second to last or third to 131st out of 133 teams in defense last year. They didn't look that bad Saturday over there in Dublin. Big win for them. Fill in the blank. It's blank that Deion Sanders has banned a Denver columnist from asking him or others in the program questions at their media availabilities this season.
Petty and childish. I mean, it's just because he was asking questions that Deion didn't like. Like, dude, you are a Power 4 head coach. You're going to get asked tough questions, man. Like, that's what comes with being a head coach. You're going to get asked tough questions. And you know what? You know why you also get asked tough questions? When you go 4-8 or whatever you went last year. You're going to ask tough questions, man. Like, you can't have that thin skin. I'm sorry. I think that's weak. I think that's very, very weak on his part.
I think so as well. And, Deion tries to set up there like, oh, he can take the heat and all this stuff. Like, how are you so thin-skinned, and trying to do the whole BS of, I don't read any of the papers or listen to any of this stuff. So apparently this guy, Sean Keeler is his name. He made different references to Deion Sanders. Deposition Deion, the Bruce Lee of BS, called him a false prophet, and used phrases like Planet Prime, the Deion Kool-Aid, and circus, referring to what's going on. Excuse me, there in Boulder. I don't think a lot of people would disagree with most any of that, but this guy happens to be sitting right there in Denver, not very far from Boulder. Now they are going to let this guy go to games. He can still go to the games.
You just can't ask any
cover
questions.
the games. Just can't ask any questions. Basically, it's really weak. I think weak is the perfect, I don't understand a guy like Deion Sanders who has lived in the spotlight for basically his entire adult life, played in the NFL, played in the World Series, the whole thing, to still to sink to this level.
Yeah. Well, and then, I agree with D-Rock that this is weak on the admin's part too. Like if the coach comes to them, like, we need to ban this guy, but like, no, we're not going to do that.
Right.
Stop. Yeah.
So someone tweeted last week about this whole, would you punch your best friend in the face as hard as you could if it would guarantee your favorite college football team?
Did you see Brian's response to that?
National championship. I did.
Okay.
I did see that. He's punching you.
Yeah.
Apparently. It feels to me like this is the wrong question, though. Like, shouldn't the real question be, isn't it whether or not you're willing to take the hit as opposed to hit somebody? Like, that's the real question, right?
100%. That is absolutely the real question. And clearly the question was posed to me, and I was like, do it. My response specifically was faces heal, championships last forever.
Right.
I'll take it. I'll take one for the team on that. I mean, shoot, I've been waiting since I was 7 years old for Notre Dame to win a title. If you're going to guarantee me one good sock to the jaw is going to get Notre Dame a title, I'll take it. Let's go. Now, it has to come from one of my friends who none of them are professional boxers or MMA fighters or anything like that.
So, you're not willing, you
know what I mean?
You draw the line, no Mike Tyson's.
Correct.
None of that kind of stuff. It just has to be. Okay.
I mean, that would be a lot for me. I would volunteer a lot of other people to take punches from those guys, but
it has to
myself.
be no threat of surgically needing to heal.
Yes.
Or anything. No real threat of surgically needing to heal.
Correct. I mean, I'm like going through the Rolodex of my friends right now. I'm good. Go ahead. Have at it. We're all old.
Punch away.
Go. Yeah.
Yep. Like I said, it felt like the easy question. Would you be willing to punch your best friend? That's not the question. The question is what kind of shot are you willing to take as the recipient of the punch? That's who you need to be asking.
100%.
Would you be willing to take a punch from your best friend? And that's the question.
I would try to have some rules, okay, where are you going to hit me? I'll be talking straight on, in the nose. Are we talking across the jaw kind of a deal? What are we talking about? Are we talking you're going to give me a black eye? I don't know.
Have you ever seen Tropic Thunder?
Long time ago.
Where Tom Cruise is up on the video conference screen and there's a whole, conference table. There's all this stuff going on in this movie set. And so the director is sitting there and the director is kind of sniveling and he's, going back and forth with Tom Cruise. And Tom Cruise is like, who's the executive producer? And the guy over on the side is like, Tom Cruise goes, go over to that guy and I want you to punch him in the face. And he did.
Okay.
But that's what it reminds me of. Yeah. So I think you have to avoid the nose.
Thank you.
On the side.
If we're avoiding the nose, I'm all for it. I have a very fragile nose. So you come after me. Let's go.
Anthony, thank you very much for the super chat. We do appreciate it. Ryan's coming at you right now. He wants to know what part of your face you choose to get punched.
Anything
except for the nose.
Right here. You can go chin. You can go cheek. You can go eye.
I think the eye.
Yeah, have at it.
I'd say eye because like jaw, like you never know. Like depending on how it lands, you could have a sore jaw. You might not be able to eat it. It could break your jaw if it
could. Am I allowed to take the punch? Am I allowed to go with it? You know what I mean?
Would you be willing to do one of those slap contests?
Oh God, that looks awful.
I know.
Have you seen some of those?
I know.
Holy moly!
I'm surprised more people on those things don't get concussions.
I don't know how you don't. I mean, a concussion is literally your brain bouncing around in your head. How do you not get a concussion from what those people like? The women smack each other with some serious ferocity. Like, oh my gosh! And those dudes that do it. Those are not small guys. It's not like you and me going up there. Like these are like bodybuilding guys. I always think it's hilarious because they're always like they're like winding up and then they just whoop, oh my gosh, like that is unbelievable.
Brian Van Gorder's mustache. Where did this come from? Maybe I can get the former voice of Mishawaka Sports, Sean Stiers, to give me a "Let's Go Caveman." Did I ever do it? Let's Go Caveman.
I don't think you ever did, because he was trying to get me to say it. I was like, dude, this is Mishawaka
because of Penn Mishawaka this week.
Like this is Penn Mishawaka week. Like I used to call Mishawaka games, and I used to be a big Mishawaka fan, frankly. But then my son went to Penn. I have to cut ties. I have to cut allegiances. I mean, it's just the way it is, man.
Changed everything.
It did. It changed everything. Come on, man. I can't root for Mishawaka. I wouldn't be able to go to work. Like, this is not what you do.
Big rivalry game coming up this Friday.
Big rivalry game. Going to christen the new field over there.
That's right. They've got new turf and the whole thing, don't they?
Oh, yeah. Yep. They have yet to play on it. So this is going to be the big dedication. And they got that new statue out front, the big
caveman statue
out front. Oh, yeah. It's the real deal. It's the real deal.
All right. Big week. It is finally game week for Notre Dame. We've kicked it off, talking a little offensive line, a little depth chart, some thoughts from Marcus Freeman. Tomorrow we'll have some of that whiteboard. We'll get into Texas A&M, of course, with the whiteboard as well. We'll get into some of that Colin Klein offense and some more. And of course, we'll have more throughout the week as well. And kind of fast forwarding to Friday, don't forget, there won't be a live show from us on Friday, but we will drop the Countdown to Kickoff show every Friday, kind of early evening-ish. It'll drop both on YouTube and on the podcast platforms starting this Friday. So looking forward to that. All right. Appreciate you being here. Hit that like button if you would. And of course, subscribe, rate, and review. Game week is here. Notre Dame, Texas A&M this Saturday. And we will talk to you later on IB Nation Sports Talk.